to the Global Forum on Intercultural Communication, presented jointly by the Office of Global Affairs in collaboration with Multilingual and Intercultural Communication. As you know, the Global Forum series offers a venue for students and faculty to discuss contemporary global issues that affect our campus and community. My name is Jun Liu. I'm Vice Provost for Global Affairs and Dean of International Academic Programs and Professor of Linguistics at Stony Brook University. Stony Brook University is ranked as one of the most diverse universities in the United States. We're also one of the most international, with approximately 5,500 international students from over 100 countries and nearly 350 international faculty and scholars. With such an international and multicultural campus, it is integral for our campus community to learn how to communicate and connect with one another. Today, we are featuring intercultural communication, a subject, a discipline, a concept, a topic, a practice, or whatever you can call it, refers to communication across different cultures and different social groups on how culture affects communication. Intercultural communication is sometimes used synonymously with cross-cultural communication. In this sense, it seeks to understand how people from different countries and cultures act, communicate, and perceive the world around them. Aside from language, intercultural communication focuses on social attributes, thought patterns, and the cultures of different people and different groups. It also involves understanding the different cultures, languages, and customs of people from other countries. Today, we will hear from 5 distinguished cross-disciplinary faculty on the importance and implications of intercultural communication and how we can enhance and celebrate our multicultural and diverse campus. Please allow me to introduce today's featured speaker and panelists. First and foremost, Dr. Agnes He, sitting right close to me. Agnes. She is Professor of Applied Linguistics, founder and director of the Center for Multilingual and Intercultural Communication, what is called MIC, and the chair of the Department of Asian and Asian American Studies, AAAS, at Stony Brook University. She was educated in China, Singapore, and the United States. Her research centers on language, communication, and culture in the context of global migration. She has published extensively in the areas of discourse linguistics, educational linguistics, and Chinese linguistics. Her work has been funded by the Spencer Foundation, National Academy of Education, U.S. Department of Education, and currently the National Science Foundation. Professor He was named a Guggenheim Fellow in 2011. So she will be our featured speaker today. Sitting next to her is Dr. Nancy Gaurav. She is professor and chair of Department of Chemistry. Last year, Nancy served for 5 months as interim dean of the graduate school, and before that, she served for 3 years as associate provost for the integration of research, education, and professional development. Dr. Gaurav earned her bachelor's degree from Harvard University in 1990 and PhD in chemistry from UCLA in 1994. She held a National Science Foundation postdoctoral fellowship in chemistry at Michigan State University and a Research Corporation postdoc fellowship in chemical education at the University of Michigan before starting her career at Stony Brook University in 20 years ago, 1997. Dr. Gaurav's research focuses on organic materials, especially carbon-based conductors and semiconductors. In 2013, she was recognized with American Chemical Society's Award for Creative Research and Applications of the London Chemistry. Dr. Gaurav is a member of the American Chemical Society's Graduate Education Advisory Board and the National Advisory Board of Union of Concerned Scientists, and she serves on the steering committee of the Alan Elder Center for Communicating Silence. I'm only selecting very basic from their CV, so their accomplishment can last for at least 20 pages. So you probably are eager to hear who is that gentleman sitting next to her. Michael Foreman is SUNY Distinguished Professor and Chair of Department of Pharmacological Sciences. He undertook training in a variety of disciplines, including biochemistry, immunology, developmental biology, and medicine at the University of Michigan, UPenn, UCSF, respectively. Dr. Frontman has been director of the Stony Brook University NIH-funded medical scientist training program called MSTP, MD, PhD for 13 years, graduating around 100 trainees. In his own lab, Dr. Frontman has trained more than 50 students and fellows, ranging from high school students and undergraduate students to graduate students, MD, PhD students, postdoctoral fellows, and research faculty. Approximately 20% of his trainees have been or are URM and about half international. He has been an external reviewer of other graduate and MD, PhD training programs and has participated in national conferences on training methods and in study section reviews of NIH training grants and individual training awards. But what is more unique is that he married a Greek woman, who is our very own Stella Churka, who is currently Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs at Stony Brook University. That's why he is so international. Professor Wei Zhu, sitting next to him, is also a very well-known scholar and researcher. She is Professor of Statistics and Deputy Chair of the Department of Applied Mathematics and Statistics, which is a department full of international students, called AMS at Stony Brook University. She was educated in China and also the United States. Her research covers both biostatistics and financial statistics. Her publications are numerous, which can be found in leading statistical and scientific journals, including JASA, JAMA, you probably don't know them, but next one you know, Nature, and PNAS. In China, if you publish something in Nature, you are the god. Her work has been funded by DOE, NASA, and NIH. Last but not least is our very own Professor George Eugene Forum. A native of Haiti, he is Professor of Education and Social Sciences at the State University of New York at Stony Brook, or your own university. His research focus is transnationalism and its effects as experienced by Haitians in Haiti and those of the Haitian diaspora. His latest book, authored with Nina Klick-Schiller, called Georges Woke Up Laughing, Long-Distance Nationalism and the Search for Home, was published by Duke University Press in 2001. His latest manuscript, Haiti's Migratory Streams at the Crossroads of Global Capitalism and the Politics of Compelling Empires, is under review by Penn State Press. Probably you heard a lot about them from me, so it's time for me not to speak. So now it's my distinct honor to invite our featured speaker today, Professor Agnes He. You will be there? Yes. Okay.
I am so short, if I stand there, I won't be able to cheat from the screen, so I'll be here, right? Okay. All right, so my role today is to provide a framework and a point of departure for our discussion this afternoon. So we are going to look at basically three kinds of questions. The first one is, what does it really mean for us to be saying that we have a global campus? The second one is, what is the role that intercultural communication play in all of this? And then finally, what are the implications for all of us, educators, teachers, and students, and so on, right? So we'll begin with the first question. What does it mean for us to have a global campus? And I will begin with a few snapshots from our very own campus. Now, if you look at this photo, this on the left is our student Ashley. Her family come from Jamaica, and she had an undergraduate degree in China studies, and she has developed fluent Chinese, and right now working on master's degree in teaching English as a second language, and planning to pursue her doctoral degree in the Chinese language in China. How about that? Next to her, on the right, was our student Kevin, who's now also planning to teach English. I just got an email from him a couple of days ago. He's going to teach English in UAE, United Arab Emirates, right? And he is from local Long Island. Now, what they were doing was that just a few weeks ago, in this very theater, on this very stage, Ashley and Kevin, in fact, were MCs of a Chinese New Year celebration. And they did it not just in English, but they did it in Chinese. So they really dazzled and charmed and indeed surprised the entire audience in a delightful way, obviously, right? Okay, the second snapshot is really, this is a photo of our research group. This is June just mentioned the MIC, our research center. So one of the projects that we're doing is the project that's funded by National Science Foundation, where we look at communication between international graduate students and undergraduate students in STEM classes. So we want to look at what kinds of changes that take place longitudinally over time. So by the end of the first year, we in fact interviewed one of our research participants, and we asked her, she's an international student from China, and we asked her, do you feel that your English has improved in the last year that you've been at Stony Brook? And her reply was, she said, yes, definitely, but not in the way I anticipated. She said, when I first came, it was certainly not easy to understand native-speaking professors and students, but it was even harder to understand my teammates in the research group who come from Turkey, France, Germany, Singapore, Korea, you name it. So it's very difficult. And then she says, by the end of the first year, by the end of this year, now not only I can understand them perfectly, I've even picked up some of their accents. So this is what happens when you have a lot of people coming together, doing work together. The ways in which you speak and even the ways in which you behave would change and shift. So as one of my colleagues in the field really says, that in the context of globalization, shift happens. Also in our research center, you're going to find this painting. And in this painting, you're going to find Arabic letters and African tribal signs, as well as animal footprint on Long Island, right? So standing next to the artwork is the artist herself. Her name is Soraya. She was born to parents who are from West Africa. She grew up in the Middle East and was educated in Europe, married a European, now living on Long Island. And this is how she describes herself. I'm United Nations all by myself. Indeed so. This is our third year chemistry or organic chemistry lab. You have an international student who's a TA and working with undergraduate students from all over the world. This is Karen was going to like this. This is our Eureka Undergraduate Research Forum, where we have students literally from every corner of the world talking about things of common concern, identities and language and communication. Right? So this is the reality. This is what our campus looks like. I mean, can we imagine any day you can walk through, all of us, can you imagine any day you walk through the day without meeting someone, doing work with someone from somewhere else? It is very hard to say no, right? So this is the reality. We are inevitably and really connected through globalization and of course also through technological advancement. And we are globally constituted. If you look at our student body, of our faculty, of our staff, we're globally constituted, and we're also globally oriented. So we may be located in a little place called Long Island, but our mission and our reach actually really go far beyond. Did I say that? Far beyond. We really go far beyond, and that's literally true. Yeah. I'm surprised I actually said it. See, language shift happens. Yeah. And together come with it, we also have strengths, and not only strengths, but also stresses as well. And this is something that we're going to explore for the rest of the day today. So what are some of the benefits having living in a global campus like this? Well, first of all, it enables us to develop this kind of cross-cultural awareness and global civics. What is global civics? It is that the kind of responsibility that we have towards one another, and we are at the same time both local, discrete, and also global. We have a responsibility as human beings, as earthly beings, right? And secondly, it sort of compels us to develop this ability to manage conflicts. And every time any two persons get together, we're going to have conflicts, let alone persons from very diverse, divergent backgrounds. We will also need to be able to negotiate in a variety of contexts in ways that are not that we're not either encapsulated by any given culture or are alienated from that culture. So this is kind of a fairly postmodern kind of precarious balance that we have to keep. And then the neat thing about all of this is that we're able to think of culture as not something that is static, but also as something that is dynamic, that is evolving and shifting, and that is something that we can use as a resource, as a set of tools. So we can strategize. We have greater identity options, community options, right? So we can pick and choose and our resources and strategies depending on who we are talking with, what kind of setting that is, what's the purpose of our communication, and so forth. And finally, we will be able to develop abilities to explore problems that used to be confined to a particular generation or particular geographical region. Now we can go beyond those demarcation lines, right? But as they say, there's never free lunch, so it comes with problems as well. What happens to our identities, and what about our cultural cohesiveness? I can give you one anecdote. I used to have a student who told me that when she was in grade school, K through 12, she never had time to do school homework. I said, why? Because she was an excellent student. She said, well, she has an Asian mother and American father. The Asian mother would ask her to do enrichment classes after school ends. And after that, the American father would say, no, kids have to play at least 1 hour a day. So after enrichment class, she would play, and then it's time to go to bed already. So she was always punished at school for not doing homework. Stuff like that can also happen, right? So as faculty then, as researchers, faculties, we sort of like, if you look at our students in our classrooms, they are very different these days from even, I would say, even 10, 20 years ago, right? They are very different. So who they are, what they really need, how do they learn, these are new questions that we all need to address. And from the student points of view, people are questioning, who are our professors? I can tell you that some of my students were quite disappointed in seeing me because they said, well, when we were in China, we really enjoyed having American professors. Now I've come to America and I have this Chinese professor, right? So I was a real disappointment to some of them. Even a simple question like, what is your primary language? Is now becoming a very difficult question to answer because we develop expertise in different domains of life. So it is very hard to say, what is the language that you are best at? We used to think of mother tongues as our native language, but these days the problem is that our mothers don't stay put at one place. They travel, they move, they change jobs, they move from one geographical space to another. And as they do so, the tricky thing is that they lose languages, they pick up new languages, they pick up accents. So our mother tongue is no longer a monolithic, a sort of entity anymore. It's something that's becoming very complex. So there will be disorientation, disappointment, sometimes confusion, and even alienation within the same sort of community. And this is exactly where intercultural communication comes in, right? So the connection between intercultural communication and global campus is that you have to see it as a symbiotic existence, right? If you look at the picture, some of you see a young lady, some of you see an old lady, but you cannot see one without the presence of the other. This is a very well-known piece of artwork, right? So I hope you can walk away with this image in mind. They have to be together. Now, but before we talk about intercultural communication, what is culture? For the students in the audience, what professors do really enjoy doing a lot is that we like to provide answers to questions that nobody asks, right? So this is one of those questions. I mean, everybody thinks this, I know what culture is, but what it is really a very slippery concept. We can think of it as, this is one answer, please don't take it as the answer, right? You can think of it as a symbolic system. You can think of it as an adaptive system that regulates human behavior to ecology, and that ecology also includes human ecology, and that human ecology in today's world evolves and changes all the time. It's also a cognitive system about how we draw inferences about the kind of our observed events and the places and the persons and so on. So with this definition then, intercultural communication then literally really just means two or more persons coming together, and then they really carry with them different symbolic, adaptive, and cognitive systems. And then what they do together, they come together to share symbols, verbal as well as nonverbal, right? Sounds simple. But it occurs in a very complex kind of a system. That system, in fact, it embodies the cultural, the situational, the perceptual, as well as the relational contexts, right? I'll have time to elaborate if there's interest during discussion session. So if you look at intercultural communication as a practice, we're really talking about a set of skills. I'm not going to read the slide. You can read it on your own. But this kind of set of skills is going to enable us to become multicultural. Now, multiculturalism has become a buzzword, but exactly what it is something that enables us to appreciate and respect and tolerate differences. Really, this is, to put in simple terms. It can also be viewed as education and research, and then by that we would mean deliberate efforts, systematic deliberate effort that we make to understand, to explore, and to nurture those sets of skills, and which is really what we're doing today, this afternoon. We're talking about intercultural communication. So, what does all of this mean for all of us then? There are two aspects of the implication. Broadly speaking, the implication, I would suggest that we would need a comprehensive approach to education that systematically, purposefully encourages everybody on campus to be active and engaged participants in a world that is increasingly interconnected. Right? And this is really not just about students, it's about everybody who participates in all realms of campus life. That's one. And secondly, to understand that teaching and learning, in fact, are, believe it or not, cultural processes or cultural activities. What do I mean by that? The kinds of decisions we make about teaching, the kinds of decisions we make about learning as students are premised upon our cultural specific conceptualizations as to what it means to be learning, to be teaching, what works best in terms of learning and teaching, right? These are cultural activities. It's not often realized sufficiently enough. And thirdly, in the broad implication, I would say that we would need a campus kind of awareness, which is really the purpose of today's forum, and we would need engagement of everybody, not just the Office of Global Affairs or the MIC Research Center or the languages and cultures departments, but really everybody. And that's why we have I have my distinguished colleagues from all over the campus today. Specifically, my background is really discourse studies, discourse and communication studies. So at a specific level, we need to look at communications that are missed or miscommunication. I mean, these are two different kinds of things. So there is really a difference. It could be a great difference between one person's projection versus the other person's perception. So there will be gaps in how we work those things out. And secondly, very important, we need to always keep in mind that communication is a two-way traffic. Every time we are frustrated, we find there are difficulties. That problem, that frustration belongs to all parties involved, and it's not any one party's fault. We are all in this together. We are all in this together. And to know that if in the case of if we have frustrations, and then that is just a phase. As if we stick to it, we will develop. This is our, I think the medical scientists and the chemists and the other colleagues will tell us this is a human nature. We adapt to one another. We will grow. We will evolve together. And in the end, we're all going to grow. We will have growth and development from this process. And then we would need to remain open-minded so that we can allow for the creation of new meanings and the new significance that really emerges through this kind of interaction, that the meanings that may not exist a priori prior to our mutual engagement, right? Okay, so two kinds of cautions. Xenophobic ideology obviously undercuts global education and intercultural communication. That's quite obvious. But the other thing is a little subtler, and that is a nationalistic ideology, which uses intercultural communication and globalization not as a tool to arrive at the kind of mutual respect and understanding on the equal level, on the equal basis, but rather to achieve international supremacy. That's another kind of danger that I would like to warn us against. Okay, so I think I've used probably more than 10 minutes that has been allocated to me. Now I'm going to give the floor to my colleagues to talk about the real stuff from the various disciplines and departments. So thank you very much.
As you know, I'm moderator, also timekeeper. I secretly set alarm clock. It's about to ring, so she finished. So that means she has kept her time very well. I wanted to tell you that all the panelists will contribute to this discussion. So each of them will take turns to talk about this issue from their own perspective and experience. And after that, we are going to open the floor for discussion. And before you leave, each panelist will give you some takeaways so that you will feel coming here today is very meaningful. Without further ado, I'd like to refer to Professor Nancy Goroff to share with you her perspective.
Thank you, June. And I want to start by thanking Agnes in particular and both the Office of Global Affairs and the MIC Center for putting together this forum. This is incredibly important, I think, for our campus, and I'm really excited by the existence of this forum, and I'm really excited by the research that Agnes's group is doing in the MIC, because we do truly have a global campus. We have people from all over the world as students, we have people from all over the world as researchers, as faculty, as staff, and it's one of the strengths of the campus, as Agnes just so eloquently said, but also leads to certain challenges. This is important not just for us here, but I think it's really important for us as educators, for our students as they go out into the world, even the world of Long Island. I have a friend who's an engineer at Honeywell who works in Melville, so just around the corner from here, but spends his days on the phone in conference calls or on Skype with people from all over the world, starting at 7 a.m. and sometimes going till 10 p.m. because he's Skyping with people from Bangalore, India, Brno, the Czech Republic, Strasbourg, France, all working together on the same projects. And they need to be able to communicate, and sometimes they don't meet in person until they've been working together for 6 months or a year or longer. So they have to be able to bridge these gaps by Skype, which is that much more challenging than bridging the gaps in person. And so I think as educators, even if our campus wasn't so diverse, it's incumbent on us to train our students. And for you as students in the audience, I think it's a particular advantage that we have such a diverse campus because this is the way the world works now. I only wanted to, beyond that, as an opening remark, I just wanted to say this does trip us up sometimes in the lab. In some ways, what we're trying to do in a research lab is teach everybody, whether they come from the United States, Ghana, Africa, China, Turkey, wherever, teach them the culture of the lab, of a scientific lab. And I remember remarking to a Chinese graduate student many years whose advisor is from rural Texas, and I grew up in suburban Chicago, that the three of us in many ways had more culturally in common than we did with the people who we grew up with, because we had all become part of this culture of the research lab. But that isn't how it starts when people first come. And I had a student, an American who was a former Marine, who came into the lab, had been in the group for almost a year, I guess, and another student in the group, another American, was supposed to bring the food for group meeting one week and forgot. And group meeting was at lunch time, and so there was no lunch. And this former Marine decided that he had best teach the student that that was not okay, and so he got a piece of wood as a base and mounted a roll of toilet paper on this with a sign on it that had a profanity, the Blank House Award, which he was going to present to this student. And he thought it was terribly funny, but I had to explain to him that for the international students in the group, this was perhaps a bit extreme, and that even though he was going to give it to another American who I think was going to get the joke, this was not an okay way to proceed because it made an environment that was not comfortable. So those are the kinds of things that we need to watch out for. On the other hand, one other very quick anecdote, I have another American student and a student from another country whose small child went home to her home country with her parents so that they could take care of him from the time he was 10 months old to a year and a half old. And one day my American student came in to me and said, I just want to let you know that Leigh's son is coming back tomorrow. And I told her she should tell you, but she should take the rest of the week off. And the international student was too embarrassed to tell me that she wanted to take time off. And so she was going to be seeing her son for the first time in 9 months. I get choked up just thinking about it now, 10 years later. But she was going to be seeing her son for the first time in 10 months, but was planning to come into the lab the following day to present her research and group meeting because she didn't want to bother me, her advisor, with this personal news. And so I immediately contacted her and said I didn't want to see her for the rest of the week. And I was extremely grateful to the American student who knew me enough and knew the culture enough to say that this was okay to tell your advisor something like this, and it wouldn't be held against you. So I'll stop there.
Michael? So there are lots of ways that we can misunderstand each other as well. I was just listening to Nancy's story and remembering when I was a postdoc, and there was another postdoc in the laboratory who was German. And we had our lab meetings in the morning, and you were supposed to bring food for breakfast when it was your turn. And when it was Jürgen's turn, he brought in pickles and a lot of strange things. And we said, okay. And we ate the pickles and the other stuff and thought, well, he's from Germany, and this is what they eat in Germany. And this happened a few times. And finally, we met Jürgen's wife. And we said, so is this typical of breakfast in Germany? She said, no, that's just Jürgen. Nobody eats that. So there's lots of miscommunications can occur in both ways. So I'll talk a little bit about at least medical science and what we really value tremendously in our field is creativity and the ability to approach solutions in lots of ways, think outside the box, go beyond the kind of formal training that you've had in your own background. And one of the reasons that we really value international interactions and students and faculty and colleagues is because they can bring new ways of thinking to things that are different than the ways that we've been trained in. And in the end, this creates greater mental flexibility. It's all about the creativity and finding unique solutions to problems. Everybody knows what the questions are. There's the first person who thinks of the right way to approach it, who gets the answer. And there's some similarities between this and what the Alan Aldous Center for Communicating Science is trying to do for all students on campus right now. And that was started here and it's now going globally. And again, we're trying to train in this idea of flexibility. Communication works in both ways. There's lots of things for international students to learn from American culture, American labs when they come here, and in reverse for Americans to learn from different ways of thinking that are coming from around the world. And I thought that I would illustrate this by just talking about one of my favorite papers from a long time ago. It was written by a Japanese scientist, Professor Tatsuo Murakawa, who did a sabbatical here in the late 1980s. And the article, which you can look up, is called Sushi Science versus Hamburger Science. And there's a lot that's in it, but I'll just sort of encapsulate it for a minute. So in it, he describes many Japanese scientists would use the same sort of approach to problems that we do today here, but he describes the historical approach of Japanese scientists. And what he said is the idea of the investigation centers on the idea that truth can never be definitively proven. Rather, the mission of scientists is to collaborate to identify that which is not true so that you get ever closer to the truth. And in that context, all experimental results are equally important in that they all make a contribution to this shared goal. The focus is not on the individual, on the scientist as an individual or as the hero who made the discovery, but rather it's on the facts that were revealed by the experiment, and the facts should speak for themselves without excessive interpretation. So in contrast, hamburger science focuses on the individual scientist who creates his own testable hypothesis and justifies the merit of his experimental results by describing them as discovering, for the first time ever, a critically important truth, which was additionally unexpected because everybody else working in the field previously held wrong beliefs, which the hamburger scientist is now correcting for the very, very first time ever. So this requires hypothesis building and a framework and model building. And in truth, it has been a powerful approach to make scientific progress go forward, but it can also cause people to have blinders on as they have to defend their hypothesis and models. So this is just one example. Many of you coming from other cultures might have other things that you've seen that are differences in terms of how you would approach problems than American labs do here, and both cultures have a lot to learn from each other. I'll just add as a secondary benefit that I would agree, we're in troubling times. Nationalism is rising around the world in many countries, and this is leading to a hardening of attitudes towards foreigners. And one of the wonderful things about science and international science, this is a way to build relationships and collaborations that can try to bring down these boundaries and have levels of communication that can go throughout countries and individuals that help to oppose these things. So we really value international science and collaboration for that purpose. And I guess the other comment I would make based on Nancy's comments is that, in fact, I had an 8 a.m. Call this morning that was a conference call between here and Europe, Japan, China, and Australia, because one of my roles is as the editor for the Handbook of Experimental Pharmacology. And this is something that's very rewarding as well. We have editors all around the world, and we talk a couple of times a year and then get together once a year to talk about chapters and books and what we're developing. And that's a really enjoyable part of the job.
So I actually see a lot of familiar faces here. This communication is very important for us as statisticians because our job is to get to know other people, to know their problems, translate their problems into a math problem, and solve that math problem. Then translate back to their own domain, intuitive answers. So we really need to communicate. And for me also, I am one of the Chinese faculty. You come here to America, you have a Chinese professor. Not only you don't have a true American professor, and not only that, she doesn't speak English that is very understandable. So, but because I've been through actually the same thing with many of the foreign students here, so I feel I can tell them something, from my own experience. One thing I said to my students, you come here, you know something you never know in my class. Actually, I feel, when we come to a country, that's not our country, initially, well, right now it could be your native country, adopted country, same, right? You probably want to have a name, like English name, right? Actually, I do have an English name, although I don't use it. And I ask my students to guess what that name is. They guessed 3 times, they didn't get it right. My English name actually is Margaret.
Margaret.
Yeah, so, yes, the Iron Lady. But so when I first came to this country, I was 22. But 22 is quite a mature age because I already got 4 years of undergrad study. I went through 1 year of graduate study. In a way, I'm already half a professional. So I came here, I was confident. I know what I'm doing. I can do a good job. I was a teaching assistant, but still it was very hard. Actually, I initially came to Chicago. I live in Oak Park, and I had to take that train.
That's where I grew up.
Can you believe it? And I took that train, and I was so nervous because I couldn't understand those station names properly. Cicero, Racine, and I was so nervous, right? All those years of English is like nothing. And then I was actually a teaching assistant, more like an instructor. I teach the problem-solving section for the calculus class. But fortunately, I learned, I should write down every step on the board. That's what I did. And so 1 month after I started my job, and this young lady came to my office and she said, "Today, finally, I understood what you were saying." 1 month later. But I was very grateful because they were really quite open-hearted to me. They came to me, they talked to me, and they brought me tea, the American tea. And so I was also a very open person. I talk. I probably quite lack the Oriental virtue. I'm not very quiet. And I think that's a very good personality to get to know others, right? For exchange. If you don't talk, people don't know you, right? But you also have to listen very carefully. Even these days, my students have been very helpful to me. The other day, my student Tom came to me, "Professor, your lecture today is terrible. I couldn't understand a thing." I said, "How could? It's very understandable." Of course, I forgot. I've known this for years and years, and for him, it's the first time. I went home, I tried to digest that message, and I compiled the different lecture notes. And even after I read that lecture notes, I thought, yes, that is a better way, much better. And he said so too, right? So, really, we couldn't really do better if we do not put our strengths together. Absolutely. Sometimes I forget how to say certain things. Sometimes I forget how to spell certain things. I ask my students, right? I say, "Tom, how to spell this? Is this right?" I mean, this is all the time. I feel this is, when I came to this country, I had $200 in my pocket. And now I have everything, right? This is really, in a way, is really very grateful to this country. So I feel, for me, I do my best to give back to my students, not only my, American students, but of course also my international students, because, many of them, they came here because they think this is one of the best countries in the world, which it is, as Warren Buffett said, the babies born in these countries are really the very lucky ones. What else? My time limit up? Probably.
We give you 1 more minute if you...
1 more minute to conclude. So even to these days, I feel it's very important we do a good job, right? Just to be communication, right? As a professor, so I have all my lecture notes written carefully, uploaded on my website. And because my English is never perfect, even my children, they say, "Mom, you are an outlander." Outlander. But it's okay, I accept that, right? Because you know, although you love this country, you love this language, but something you cannot, you know, really perfect, like you're speaking, you know, as good as a native speaker, right? But then when they come out of this place, they'll all have a big family, you know, that we can identify with. That's Stony Brook. Like even here, you probably didn't notice, you probably didn't know, like Nancy and Agnes, the three of us, we actually all graduated from UCLA. Really, you know, when I first came to this campus, I didn't look for another Chinese. I went to look for Professor Marcy Lobel in psychology because she graduated from UCLA. And my mentor, Professor Peter Benter, said, when you go to Stony Brook, you look for Marcy. And you know, immediately I talked to her and I felt this is home. And I felt you should be doing that too. You should help each other, you know, improve together, because once you get out of here, you will all be part of Stony Brook.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the invitation, and I'm really, really proud to be here. The question that I was asked to talk about is, what is transnationalism in the age of globalization? And that's my research area. I will begin by saying that without any doubt, we are living in the most challenging and troubling time as our humanity is being tested daily. Indeed, we are living in an era when populations that are desperately fleeing from their lives from wars, famine, political violence, and repression are being rebuffed and pushed back. Worse yet, others are proposing to build walls to separate peoples from one another, motivated by unreasonable fear and dread of the other. Those who promote these isolationist initiatives anchor their contentions in the highly jingoistic expression of the most obstinate form of nationalism that in the past had caused so many miseries the world over. Yet, while these contrarian voices and forces are laboring hard to separate and alienate peoples, the integrative forces of globalization are pulling them closer together in an embrace that, although at times is problematic, abounds nonetheless with exciting promises and encouraging prospects. In the global world of today, communication across cultural, social, and political boundaries has become an essential and indispensable tool to build harmonious relationships and connections among nations and peoples. Those who use the tools to integrate many disparate and distinct populations have been designated as transnationals. Transnationals are migrants who live their lives in spaces we call social fields that link together their country of origin and the country of settlement and transcend boundaries. While they seek to find a place in the host nation, they maintain their pre-migratory ties with their homelands by developing social linkages that span the political borders of states. As they evolve in the transnational social fields, the transmigrants are not promoting a naive form of simplistic global unity. They are fully aware of the fact that necessarily conflicts and misunderstandings will emerge within the transnational social space as populations with different cultural outlooks evolve in the same space. However, they are also certain that these misapprehensions and controversies can easily be addressed through intercultural communication and exchanges. Ultimately, the transmigrants advocate for global understanding, global unity, and global harmony, and they aspire to build bridges between their homelands and the place of settlement, making the traditional political and social boundaries less and less relevant. Instead of advocating for the building of walls among peoples, and instead of closing their hearts to solidarity, transnationals aspire to abolish and deconstruct these impediments and endeavor to redefine states' definitions of citizenship and nationality, and to deconstruct the unacceptable us versus them traditional paradigm that by transforming the nation state from below. Transnationalism does not pose a threat to the survival of the nation state, as many scholars and political stakeholders have argued. Instead, it proposes the respective nation states as common loci where many different peoples and groups can find a sense of belonging, can express their identity, and declare their loyalty to more than one political entity through intercultural communications and exchanges. After all, as Thomas Friedman has so accurately put it, the world is being flattened by the dynamism of globalization and the increasing movement of peoples around the world. Through their activism, the transnationalists and the transmigrants have been leading nation states to take account of people wherever they may exist as persons qua persons rather than persons qua citizens or nationals. However, although the transmigrants and the transnationals evolve in many different political and social spheres, they are not separated from each other by a chasm of incomprehension and misunderstanding. Intercultural communication has been the glue that has not only helped in removing those barriers among them, but has been essential in lessening the impact of many stereotypes and implied biases vis-à-vis the different members of the global acumen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Agnes He, together with other professors and panelists. As you heard from the last half an hour or so, that Professor He started by offering us a framework of intercultural communication, which was exemplified by Nancy Goroff's examples of creating a research culture which transpires from people from different nationalities, ethnic background. Wherever you are, we are working together. Michael, however, brought us with the new ways of thinking and emphasizes on the flexibility as a trainer, as a coordinator, as someone who has himself trained so many international students, postdoctorates, and faculty. Wei Zhu has shared with us her powerful personal experience coming to the United States as a doctoral student and being someone who did not major in English and found her English in China was not working at that time. Is that something you are experiencing? Yes. English does not only belong to the United States. English belongs to the world. We should celebrate different varieties of Englishes in order to coexist, respect each other. George, on the other hand, focuses on one particular issue, transnationalism, which is a new concept, but it is intertwined with our global thinking of intercultural communication, which serves as a glue to tolerate, to respect, and to really look at the issues without boundaries. Without further ado, we are opening the floor for questions. All of our panelists are willing, eager, enthusiastic to expect your questions. We have 2 microphones here and there. Okay, I don't know where they're there. But please stand up and say your name, ask your questions, please. Do you have questions? Of course you do. All right, who is the bold person to stand up first? Very good, so we have gentlemen here. Are you coming? Yes, all right.
Hi, I'm Frank Shi, and I teach a couple of courses here. But I come from the student affairs background, and I enjoy hearing your formulation of the cultural experience at Stony Brook, and I think you kind of miss a whole other side. There's a whole cultural experience that's out of the classroom, out of the laboratory, out of the out of the research phone calls that you make, and I had a real stark reminder of it when I went to a football game. Go to a football game at Stony Brook University and see the demographic profiles that are there. You know, and you don't see international at all, and there's several thousand people there. So I wonder how, and I come from a student affairs background, what can all the experience, that Stony Brook experience is not just in the classroom. You eat, you sleep, you run into people in the hallways, or not run into people in the hallways. You fight for parking and so on. How would you, what does the other experience, can that lead and help this, help us bridge so that the cultural interactions, the cultural misunderstandings that we have?
Thank you very much. I think the question is very clear, and I'd like to invite whoever wants to answer this question, please.
I can start a little bit. I think the socialization aspects are really important in terms of breaking down these boundaries. And just listening to your comments, I was reminded of something that happened very early when I was a new professor here. I had a student come to my laboratory to rotate in it, and she had just come from China, and her boyfriend had also come, and this was 1993 or so. And at that time, I don't know if it's a Stella case, you had to have permission to get married, and they weren't allowed to have permission to get married. They were too young or something. And so the first thing they did upon coming to the United States was to run down to the courthouse in Port Jefferson and get married. And then they came back to the lab. And my technician, who was from Russia, was just really upset about this and said, "What? No party?" And there was I had another Russian postdoc. And so we had a party at my house that night, and the Russians took over, and they said, "This is how we celebrate weddings in Russia." And the vodka came out, and they pulled my rotation student into the back room, and they asked her questions, all sorts of questions about what is your mother-in-law's favorite color and lots of things. And then they came back out, and they would ask these questions to the new groom and say, every time you get something wrong, you have to drink some more vodka. And so this was totally alien to anything that they had ever experienced in China. So there was the embarrassment factor, which the alcohol helped with. And everybody got a sense of, in that context, what it was like living in China and the cultural aspects of what had been dictating how they wanted to live their lives, and of course what it was like in Russia. And it was a wonderful mix, and I think this is the kind of thing that breaks down barriers and people learn about each other.
I'll just add, I think this is an incredibly important aspect that perhaps we don't pay enough attention to sometimes, and it's one of the most challenging because people tend to, outside of the classroom or the lab, mix with people from their own culture more and the things that they're comfortable with more. And so if we don't take some efforts to try to integrate those activities by introducing people to things they haven't done, like having a group outing to the football game or to the basketball game, I think they're unlikely to happen, and your comment on the demographics sort of points to that. They're unlikely to happen on their own. They don't happen spontaneously because there's so much of a pull towards what's familiar. And so I think it's a great comment and something that we should be keeping in mind. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to reduce the barriers for those things, because football games can be fun, right? You just need somebody to explain to you what a down is, and then you're okay. But it does take a little bit of effort.
Yeah, I actually been to the football game once with my daughter because my daughter really loves Wolfie, and she was so excited because Wolfie came by and they did a high five. So yeah, these days she still asks me to go, but for me, because I don't know the rules, so it's very hard. But absolutely, this is something we should definitely try.
Very good. I think that is a good question, and initiated lots of good perspectives. We'd like to hear more questions. Yes.
Yeah.
Would you hold? Just where microphone is moving. So now, whoever wants to ask questions, just raise your hand. We're going to pass the microphone.
Do you think the university and the departments themselves need to carry more of a burden to break down those, barriers that exist naturally between and among strangers? Right now, I know in my department, we don't have any formal sort of socialization. It's left to our own devices, and usually, like Nancy was just saying, when humans are left to their own devices, they subconsciously there's a penchant to go towards your own. So I guess my question is there need to be a more formal something put in place?
Agnes, you want to?
I thank the two persons who asked the question and provided a further follow-up. I think it's important from a faculty standpoint, it's really important for us to see students holistically as human beings first, and then as students. I think too often we're so busy with the work that we do, we're trying to finish our syllabus, finish our lesson plan, and we see our students as task doers and not as students who need to get married and need to see a daughter who hasn't seen for 9 months and so on. Sometimes it just takes one moment of interaction and then getting to know the students as persons. That's going to make a big difference. If I may, I would also add on to this sort of a marriage sort of anecdote. I actually got married. I met my husband in Tucson, Arizona when I was a graduate student. And then we had a wedding organized by my friends. They're all from everywhere else. Because we had no money, we were so poor, so it used a lot of local resources. We used a lot of local resources to make it happen. But the thing why it happened is because we had a mandatory happy hour. Can you believe that? Happy hours were mandatory in our graduate program during those days. It's in Tucson, Arizona, English department, which Dr. Liu used to chair for a number of years.
Yes, Tucson is very familiar to me. I wish I were there now because it's so cold here. But anyway, all right, that's not supposed to be said. Now,
June?
Here's a question.
June, I just wanted to add a little bit. I could.
Yes.
So I think there's some things that can be done to facilitate that. It's hard to order people to interact socially, but graduate programs, if there are graduate program directors and organizers here, you can have events like happy hours and things that bring students together. And if you're a graduate student who's more senior, you can have a big civ, little civ type of program. You can work as second year, third year graduate students to say, how do we introduce first year graduate students to the community and to activities, and use those sorts of things to break down cultural boundaries and mix and match people.
Actually, our department is in the process of organizing some game, maybe soccer game. Because we have 5 tracks, we have statistics, operations, research, and so on and so forth. So we want to have one team from each track. Be sure to join.
Good advertisement. Next question, please.
That's me over here.
You're camouflaged, Alfredo.
I'm sorry to be
Yes.
so aggressive. Graduate students, international graduate students, are often hesitate to socialize because they see that their advisors or their PIs want them in the lab all the time. So what strategies do you recommend to combat that? The very strong impression is that I really can't go out for professional development because I will be penalized, I won't be seen as serious. or I really hesitate to go to an information session sponsored by an employer because that's taking me away from my academic studies. So what can they do about, how can they better manage that situation?
So I think I'll take that one. You're right, we find that graduate students sometimes hesitate to go to research seminars in their field because if their advisor is sitting in his or her office, they assume that means that they weren't supposed to go to that seminar because the advisor hasn't chosen to go to that seminar. I think research advisors have to send a message that these things are valuable, that they're okay. The easiest way to send that message is to participate themselves when it's something that involves both faculty and students. When it's something that is specifically for students, to send an email to the students encouraging them to go. Not every advisor is going to do that. Some advisors really do want their students to stay in the lab, but that's not, our students are here to be students, not to be indentured slaves in the lab. And so I think graduate program directors also have a responsibility to spread the word that these things are here for our students, and if you're a student, these are activities for you. And it's very important, whether those are social activities, professional development, just research talks, any of those things. But as students, you should know that these things are here for you and it is okay to go to them. You should be still getting your research work done if you're a graduate student in a research lab, but that is not to the exclusion of doing these other activities.
So I would add that most of the faculty, if not all the faculty at the university, were selected for being hard workers, at least at an earlier time in our lives. And we look at our students, and some of them are 9-to-5 students who are just kind of putting in the time, and others remind us of ourselves. They're working really hard. And I think for someone who's a 9-to-5 student, if they come and say, by the way, I'd like to do some social, professional development stuff and go to this and go to that and be even less productive, because I won't even be 9-to-5, I'll be 9-to-5 minus a bunch of stuff. We tend to have a negative attitude, but when we see students who are busting their butts and they say, yeah, I'm going to go to this professional development thing, but that just means I'm going to be in the laboratory till 10 o'clock at night because I'm going to get my experiment done, then we're very positive about that and say, go for it. So it's really about what is your attitude toward what you're doing, and if you're perceived as someone who's enthusiastic and really motivated about their training, no one's going to say, no, you shouldn't do these things.
Very good. All right, next.
Thank you everybody. And I'm still inspired by the first questions, because for something we have to do, like jobs or study, everybody tries their best, and if they have to communicate in certain language, they do. But for something that are optional, like going to the football game or you hang around with others, we cannot make enough effort to communicate with the different people in different cultures. But as a university, this forum make us think that as a university or as a faculty members or as students, we have to think about, come up with some really great creative ways so that the students from different countries can interact and have a best experiences. And we got some suggestions from the panels. And then one thing I remember is the student clubs, student organization. Students pay for the activities, and they have Chinese club or Japanese clubs. But I have served as a faculty advisor sometimes, but they don't mix very well. And sometimes Japanese clubs, only Japanese nationals. In the following years, only students of Japanese and no Japanese students. And it was difficult to let them mix. So I thought maybe university faculty members and then administrators should think about implementing some element so that students can have an opportunity to mix through student activities or through instructions, And then I thought that would be something as a university should think about. We don't want to force students to have certain ways of living or certain ways of hanging around with friends, but maybe it will help to give some opportunity or spaces for them to necessarily interact, and then maybe they can find something after that.
Any panelists want to address this one?
Well, we give ideas, right? May not be right. And, I think that's really a great idea, right? I mean, for example, I think we all want our students to be very strong. I keep on telling my students, you guys have to go exercise, right? But maybe we could organize some sort of, say, soccer games, right? Or basketball games. Even if we organize in terms of a different department, you will see our department, probably you see a lot of Asian students. So other departments, you may see a lot of other groups. But that's also a way to communicate, not only, between different countries and origins, but also between different disciplines. I don't know who can join. You probably has. Actually, today I recommend to him, I said, well, actually I mentioned to Agnes, I said, can you give the audience some souvenirs, some pen with Stony Brook names? And sometimes, when you really link yourself to like this name, like you said, like Stony Brook, you really feel you are really linked in a big way, and which you are. My students, when they work at Amazon, when they want to recruit more workers, they usually come to me because why? Because when they get their academic siblings, they feel that they can work better together, they know the background, they wouldn't, sort of do some backstabbing, right? And so you will identify with that. I also maybe some art show, right? I don't know, if we all do some karaoke and sing in different language, but still we can appreciate the tune, right? So although I don't know some language, but when I listen to that tune, I'm really great moved. So I hope the university can really do something.
I think I would, so some of the things we struggle with in science right now, medical science, are you get what you incentivize as we think about data reproducibility and why science isn't as good as it could be. And in this case, I would say the same thing, that if the university can incentivize these sorts of things, then it could lead to more of it. So, for example, if there's the Japanese club and the Chinese students club, and the university was willing to provide funding for a mixer of the Japanese and Chinese student clubs, then they could say, okay, great, free food, and we'll do the mixer because somebody's incentivizing us to do it. And if there's ways to find a small amount of funding and somebody who's willing to think about this, we could probably do a lot.
Yeah. That's really true. You go ahead, Agnes.
Thank you. I would just like to add to the comments that have been made, and going back to the notion of culture, right? We said, well, culture can be a symbolic system, adaptive system, as well as cognitive system. So going back to a comment that was made earlier by Nancy, she said, well, she might find more commonalities with people who do similar work than with people who come from presumably similar cultural origins. That is a very interesting comment, and this is, I think, where globalization is leading us. We are going to be more and more defined by what we want to do, by the tasks, our goals, our aspirations, our interests, and then perhaps less by more static features. For example, the color of our skin, the country of our origin, and then the specific kind of religion we practice and so forth. So, and universities are wonderful places. Universities are full of people who are intensely curious about something. I think each one of you sitting here is really intensely curious about something. Otherwise, we're not in a university, right? So if we can have or activities and initiatives that get people who share the same kind of passion together, I bet we're going to bring down the cultural barrier.
Very good. I have to thank Erica for the excellent question. Actually, that is the purpose for us to organize this forum. We want to hear what suggestions comments you have. And this is the very suggestion we want to take it very seriously. Because at Stony Brook University, we help students focus on academics, and we focus on courses. What about the extracurricular? Do we have anything initiated by students? Do we have space for them? Do we have resources for them? Do we have students initiate activities that will invite different groups to join, to compete, to entertain? And I think that kind of atmosphere is missing at Stony Brook University. And my office of Global Affairs, together with other offices like Marina's Career Center, career and our advising student activities, I feel that is something we need to really look into so that everyone feel they have a place to go without mentioning food. And they have activity to participate in. They have someone to share. For instance, every culture has its own strengths and merits. Let's share with them. Let's do something. So we need some different multiple levels of organization, and that is a call to the multiculturalism to campus. So I hope we'll take this suggestion and gradually develop into many activities, but still we need students who will initiate, like Chinese students, CSSA, for instance, they organize their own Spring Festival celebration with more than 600 students participating in it. What about other cultural groups? We should share. And so we have one idea. I talked with E.K. Tan, our director of Confucius Institute. Next year, maybe we can have expanded the celebration beyond Chinese Lunar New Year. Let's celebrate multiculturalism. Let's have a fashion show. All students wear their best costume to appear on the stage. That kind of momentum and atmosphere is something we need to encourage and see happen on campus. Do you agree? You are not enthusiastic about that, right? All right. So that is something I want to hear. All right. We have time for 2 more questions. Okay, that's.
Hello.
Stand up, and you are a student, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Hello. I'm Shize Chen, and I'm from China, and I'm studying in IEC.
IEC.
Yeah,
all right.
Intensive English Center. So. Well, I have to say my English really get enhanced a lot, but there's a problem. In China, every student have to study English and for taking exam. But do you think that it's necessary for them to study English? I mean, maybe for some of them, they maybe get no chance to use English. I mean, yeah, to speak English with native speakers or do anything else in entire life. So do you think it's necessary for them or it's useful for them?
Why are you here?
I mean, maybe, yeah, I'm here for, yeah.
But I like your question because students have not realized the very purpose for them to become global citizens is to be able to communicate with other people. This is a platform. And if you speak Chinese to someone who does not share the same language, what can you do? Use body language all the time? You cannot. So I would say, don't consider English something you have to learn. English is a medium of instruction. It's a tool to learn your subject matter. Okay? Being IEC is great. I know IEC very, very well. Why? Because you are given the opportunity to have extended a period of time to acculturate yourself while enhancing your language ability. It proves that longer stay at Stony Brook University before you are matriculated is a good indication, prediction of success. So you are so lucky to be at IEC. Thank you. Thank you. Any other question? Yes, Professor. Okay, we have 2 more. 1 and 2, then we are going to wrap it up. Yes.
Okay. I'm from Singapore. Singapore is a multicultural society. So we have multiple language, we have multiple cultures. So I grew up with that kind of environment. And I think it's really important that Agnes mentioned something earlier in terms of culture is also relational. I'm very I'm very much a person who works on identity politics, but identity politics can also be a trap for us if we obsess over it. So I think it's important for us to think about ideas such as difference, not just simply to celebrate difference, but specifically to embrace difference. So this whole political situation that we're in now, us versus them kind of dynamic, is something that we have to break down. When I think about international studies, I'm also thinking about issues relating to what really defines international studies. Are we only talking about international students? Are we excluding American students when we talk about international studies? So if we do events like multicultural events, we should be thinking about bringing people together rather than just international studies only for international communities. So it's something that I think is important to think about that is related to Frank's earlier question. So it's a comment more than a question.
Very good comment, and I think we will, yes, think about it, be inclusive, and the very fact that, I believe you're American, right? Are you? Yes. So he is a good example to be engaged in this kind of dialogue. Okay, yes, I'm watching the time, but I know there is a hand over there, right? Which hand? Stand up.
Sorry for taking you guys' time. So my name is Jason. I'm actually an immigrant just like Professor Zhu. So I immigrated to the United States at the age of 13. And I finally became an American citizen 2 years ago. So I was lucky enough to have both the interaction with the Chinese international students here, as well as the domestic American students. From my observation and my experience so far, it seems that there's a lot of negative, sometimes positive as well, stereotypes from both sides. A lot of them are false. So I was just curious as to how we would break down that barrier, since a lot of people do have certain stereotypes against other cultures, and sometimes a lot of the stereotypes are not necessarily true. So since I feel like a lot of the international students have language barrier with the domestic students, how should we address that in a better way so that people can understand each other in a better way?
Thank you very much. We only have time for one response. Yes, George, yes. Please.
No, I have a class.
I'll just say that I think you have to push back on it. Well, all of us have to push back on it really hard. And it's an amazing thing about humans that stereotypes are pervasive and very easy to make. And as soon as people meet people as individuals, they say, well, that's really interesting. The stereotype doesn't apply to this person.
Yeah.
And especially with our current political situation where stereotypes are being used now publicly in a way they never were before, I think we just all have to push back on it continuously.
So with that, I'd like to invite each panelist.
Shida has a question.
Okay.
Professor Shida.
Yes, you have a question? Yes. Those of you who, if you have to go to other classes, please feel free.
I'll be very brief, just 1 minute.
Yes.
I just want to congratulate the Office of Global Studies, the panelists, for their very valuable insights and for organizing something like this. This is so important, both in terms of the fact that Stony Brook is a global campus, and also in terms of the fact that almost every job that we will be doing will involve interacting with people from different cultures and languages, and this should be an essential core part of the education of every student here, not just international students but also American students. And there should be more and more forums like this. This should become a regular feature of the university, so that every semester there would be opportunities to discuss issues and problems and solutions like this. And everybody, and also students, should have a greater opportunity to take part in these things and bring in their experiences. And also, by talking about these things in a Eureka-like forum, for instance, they will be able to see that the problems that a particular student from one nationality thinks is his own is not actually unique to them, but it's something that is shared by a lot of many other people. So I would like to see this kind of a discussion continue on a regular basis, and also for many institutional support for various other initiatives that have been brought up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a wonderful suggestion. We want to see it happen more often. Now, before we conclude today's forum, I'd like to invite panelists to give maybe one piece of advice within 1 minute each. If anyone extends 1 minute, I will cut it off. Please.
May I begin, because I have to leave.
Yes, you.
I have a class at 2:30. Food for thought. I want you to remember in the 1980s, President Reagan went to Germany, where there was a wall separating the city of Berlin, and he addressed Prime Minister Gorbachev, please Gorbachev, tear down this wall, because America represents intercommunication among nations, the getting together of different cultures and different perspectives on lives. And now we are at a time period when our government is proposing to build walls, and the more the administration speaks about building walls to separate people, the more popular it has become. So we are living in dangerous time. It is not a kumbaya time period. It is a very difficult time we are living now. I'm sorry to end it with a sour note, but what he proposed to do last night, to create vice, violent immigrant something, it is very dangerous, because it is putting into perspective people of different cultures and different perspective on life as enemies of the United States. And we as citizens of this country, we need to stop against this assault on people who are different from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just, one piece of advice. Do you have any? Professor Zhu?
Oh, right. I would say, as statisticians, we always keep open mind. Be open-minded. History is always you go to when it's a circle, more like. So I would say, let's man our study and try to do our share of communicating more with each other. If you could, get to know one other person. When I was a student, I had this roommate, and he was from Taiwan, and then we became very good friends, and we get to know each other, and we found, we share so much in common, and the difference is really minor. So that's why, when we different student bodies getting together, all you need to do is to communicate with one other, culture, and then you say, we actually share a lot in common.
Thank you very much. Michael?
So I would echo that, and I would challenge you to take the time to talk to people who come from different cultures, countries, backgrounds, and ask them, what is their origin story? Where do they come from? How do they grow up? How do they come to Stony Brook? Most of them won't have as interesting origin stories as like X-Men characters in the movies, but it always surprises me how many people have fascinating origin stories from families and backgrounds and cultures that were very different than mine, and it's sobering to hear these stories. So try to reach out to people who are different than you and ask about that.
Nancy?
I think actually I'm going to take things back from this session, back to chemistry, that we need to keep these things in mind at all time, and we need to take proactive steps to try to build those bridges. They are incredibly important at all times, and perhaps in this political moment as much as at any time in our lives. And so we each need to take steps, which means not only talking to other people, but as you said, listening to other people. And when you're talking with them, pay attention to how they respond to you and respond back. And so really listening, I think, is very important, but also providing opportunities for people to talk to each other.
Agnes?
A global campus is not a concept, it's not just an abstract notion. It is a lived experience. It is something that you and I and all of us together do. It is something that we accomplish through our everyday activities. So my advice for all the students would then be participate in campus life fully and fearlessly. And when you graduate, you should be proud that you will be a different person. If you're the same the day you leave as the day when you came, your parents will be very regretful that they paid a lot of tuition for you.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists and Professor He, together with others, to participate and to contribute, to share with you their thoughts on this very important topic. Let's give them another hand. I want to thank all of you going through 90 minutes without a break. This is not easy, but I know you benefit and you contribute. I want to thank you very much. Before you leave, I have an announcement to make. This is only the second event in the Global Forum we at Stony Brook University has organized. Upcoming this spring, we are going to have 2 more events. On March the 29th, in the same place, same time, we are going to focus on transform your life through study abroad. Our study abroad officers, our staff, faculty, and our returnees from study abroad are going to share with you how important it is to study abroad that will transform your life. On April the 12th, we are going to have a national conference jointly organized by Stony Brook University, which is called Far Beyond Recruitment, Understanding Chinese International Students and Help Them Succeed. Why Chinese? Because Chinese students are half of our international students. We need to focus on their challenges and provide solutions, issues, and recommendations. In the fall, we are going to have 5 events in a series focusing on our STAR program in Center Vibio, Madagascar on September the 13th, Russia, St. Petersburg Institute of Global Cognition and Language and Culture on October the 25th. We are going to focus on Sunni career development on November the 1st, and Rome, Italy, and Florence on November the 29th. In spring 2018, we are going to have, jointly organized by Institute of Global Studies, we are going to focus on global engineering and global health, and we are going to arrange more events far beyond. So thank you very much, and thank you.